Hello, welcome to another edition of On the Mic with Mike. I am Mike Jarvis, as usual, and joining me for this edition is Miss Elle Peale, prominent Montserratian living in the United Kingdom. Elle was in Montserrat from, 1996. I'll get her to tell the story. She was there with the eruption of the volcano, came to the United Kingdom, trained, qualified, returned to Montserrat as a social worker. And at this moment, I think it's correct to say that Elle Peale is on a sort of a humanitarian trajectory at the moment, particularly concerned about, to use your own words, Elle, championing the causes of the voiceless. Welcome to the podcast. Give us a bit of background.
Thank you, Mike. Background, I migrated to the UK in 1996, very heavily pregnant, and the hospital had gone as a result of a volcano, and went back to Montserrat in 2014, December, to really look at how I can give back to my island, Montserrat, that I love dearly, and stayed. Got a scholarship. So when I went to Montserrat, I had a degree, but was not a qualified social worker. I must correct that. I
Okay.
came back to the UK, did a master's in social work, and subsequently went back to Montserrat, but had to return back to the UK in 2021. So I am a qualified social worker. And yes, my cause is to champion for the voiceless.
And on that particular point, you have written or you have drawn attention, even more attention, to the circumstances surrounding an inmate at the prison in Montserrat, a lady who is pregnant, and that has prompted you to write to the authorities in Montserrat, in this case, principally the governor, raising concerns about the circumstances of this lady. What's your involvement, and how did you get involved in that?
My involvement, Mike, is not really an involvement because, as I said in my letter, I do not know this lady. I wouldn't know her if I saw her in the street. I do not know this lady. I heard about the case in February earlier this year and basically knew she went to prison, but didn't know that she was pregnant. And literally, the same day I wrote that letter is the same day I found out that there was an 8-month pregnant woman in Her Majesty's prison braids. And I just felt that that was totally inhumane. And I had to make representation, and I did.
Well, that is your professional background as a social worker, but also you yourself. I get the impression that you're driven to address and respond and seek some sort of solution to these types of problems. Have you heard back from the authorities, particularly from the governor? And if so, what's been said?
I got a letter from the governor, an email back basically saying, thank you for your email. Her office that is responsible for Her Majesty's prison, they have got a team around any inmate and she cannot really discuss. However, before that, I got a response from on Facebook from someone who I think has a paper, some sort of online paper, Montserrat Focus. And
Okay.
that lady told me that she had received a response from the governor when I hadn't yet.
So she
So,
received a response before you did.
yes, yes, she did. Yes, she
Okay.
did. Yes, she did. Yeah. But I must say, yes, I did receive a response from the governor. But my letter, I genuinely feel for the children because it's not so much the mother, but more the children. And my experience and my learning teaches me that the child suffers with the parent and serves the sentence with the parent who is incarcerated. Hence my letter.
Now, this issue seems to have gathered quite a lot of momentum in Montserrat to the extent that it is now an issue that's a part of the political campaign. I'm hearing a lot of people on the political platforms and political forums talking about it.
And
What
so
do you
it
make
should.
of that?
And so it should, Mike. I do think that it should. It should become a political, campaigning, you know, strong point, because here we have an 8-month pregnant lady in a prison that is or was specifically built for males, and not with women and children and anything. You have an inmate who's in prison. What happens in the middle of the night if this mother should suddenly develop any one of the illnesses, that preeclampsia, anything like that? And from my understanding, this woman is not really receiving the sort of attention and care that she should be receiving, prenatal care. This woman is being visited by the probation officer. When does probation kick in? Probation kicks in when somebody's ready to be released. So where is social services? Where is the mother and baby assessment? Where is the risk assessment? Where is the psychological assessment? That's my concern,
And
Mike.
you're speaking here, I should remind, from a background of yourself being a social worker professional and
Children's social.
also
Yeah.
working as a social worker in Montserrat. So you're very familiar with the situation on the ground in Montserrat.
Yes, yes, I am. I am familiar with the fact that I have worked in the social services department, and it's really quite concerning.
And where we have the responsibilities of the authorities in Montserrat, meaning the governor, am I understanding it that you're saying, okay, there might be the regulations and the laws and the systems in place, but in a Montserrat context, there's another element to be looked at, and that is the element of compassion.
Yes, yes,
Could
Mike.
you
And
expand on that for me then?
my concern, Mike, is that Montserrat and Montserratians, we have always been raised to be our brother's keeper. We look out for the underdog. We help the underprivileged. We try as much as we can to help where we can. And for us to see an 8-month pregnant woman in prison, it it cannot sit well in the Montserrat psyche. It cannot sit well. And it should not sit well in the Montserrat psyche, because you're talking, and remember, there's not just a pregnant mother in the prison. There are 3 young children at home who are devoid of their mother's care as well.
And it could be argued that, okay, well, you did the crime, you do the time.
Yes, Mike, I understand that argument, but the governor, and the specific reason I wrote the governor, she has, based on the Constitution, I think it's Section 2910 or something like that, she has the capacity and the authority to grant clemency, leniency. We're not leniency, clemency, Mike, could be around the mother being housebound. You only go to your doctor's appointment. And do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It can be around that. It's not that I'm saying that she did whatever she did and, she should get off scot-free. That's not the argument, and that's not my argument. My argument is, do not allow and do not let a child have to suffer based on their mother or father's misdemeanor.
Is this uncharted territory for Montserrat? Have we had a situation like this before, to the best of your knowledge, given you said your area of expertise and knowledge, local knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge, no. But I was talking to someone who said previously in Plymouth, there was one pregnant person, but I think that person was granted clemency and was allowed to leave. So to come out of prison. So it's uncharted waters in terms of in Plymouth, Mike, you remember, we had a decent sized prison. It was, upgraded and, made to be more habitable for the inmates. Because remember, even though you're an inmate, Mike, you are a human being and
Yeah.
you've got your rights. And we know that from the UK context.
I think that issue, now that you mentioned the UK, this issue of pregnant women in prison, where in the UK, I mean, the prisons would have, well, fairly adequate medical facilities. But even here, there's a massive campaign
Yeah.
regarding the welfare of pregnant women in prisons.
Well, to put it further, there's a massive campaign by the Justice Minister, Shabana Mahmood, I think her name is, who is calling for women not to be imprisoned, for there to be alternative,
When you say
sentence.
women not to be in prison, you're speaking of pregnant women.
No, no, it was just literal women. She said that there needs to be an alternative to prison because the children suffer with the women. And
Okay.
this is the justice minister. You can look into it. I did post it on my Facebook page because it's just recent that she's basically said that because there are things like restorative justice and things like that, Mike, that can be restorative justice. Look at how can you let this person do some community services? This woman could have been, granted to be out of prison, but you've got to do X amount of hours. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I just think it is, and I'm just thinking as a woman and as a humanitarian, I really still lean and call on the governor to do something, even at this 11th hour. I still call on the governor.
Well, looking at the situation in the UK, I remember, yes, I did come across something pertaining to this some time ago, and well, a few days ago, basically. And there is a situation was reported by the Guardian about concern about a woman whose baby was stillborn in the prison, one of the prisons here, and concerns that increasing appeals across the political spectrum in the UK from child safeguarding experts. You're one of those social media commentators and others to address that situation, which is now happening in Montserrat, but also, there's a much wider campaign in the UK. I think there was a change that was put in place. I'm just going to read it here from the Guardian newspaper. This goes back, this one is from 6 months back. Woman whose baby was stillborn in prison praises sentencing changes. So they are now talking about new guidance in the UK, which means fewer pregnant women are jailed. And it could be the legacy of the situation regarding this lady and her child, to put it in that context and relate it to the Montserrat situation. Look at it this way, Al. Here you are, you're in the UK. There's a situation in Montserrat that you're very concerned about, to the extent that you've been so moved to have your voice being heard on it and to directly write to the governor about it. It suggests that, and there's a deep concern with you and others in the diaspora, I'm in the diaspora too, about what is happening in Montserrat, particularly with this election, with so much talk that it is such a critical election period campaign, crossroads moment for Montserrat. What do you make of all of that, given your interest in this particular situation, but your broader interest generally in what's happening in Montserrat?
In the broader context, Mike, I do think that Montserrat is really at a crossroad in terms of this political era, this particular election, based on the fact that what Montserrat needs right now is governance, strong governance, and leadership, somebody who can forward-thinking leadership, somebody who can stand up for the people of Montserrat, because I don't see that happening. Because personally, if that was happening, this situation with the woman would have been brought to the forefront before with the pregnant woman. So what I'm seeing in Monza is that Monza needs to embark now on bold reforms, Mike. Monza needs to boldly look to governance, leadership, transparency, and accountability. That's what Monza needs at the moment. And Mike, I dare say, add that sometimes I think, does the British government really want a Montserrat?
Why would you say that?
I don't know. I just get the feeling that you look at the things that are being done that really is not to progress Montserrat, but rather it's a lot of hindrance. It's like you heard that adage 10 step forward, two step forward, 10 step backward?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. I get that with, the ones that need the stagnation, things are not really progressing. What, Mike, honestly speaking, I asked the question, where has Monster moved forward in the last 30 years?
Well, the British government would say to you, well, we are doing our bit, we are meeting our legal obligations, and Montserrat is a functioning democracy. So a lot of it falls on your political leadership.
Okay, and I agree with that, and that is why I'm saying that Monster needs strong, bold leadership and governance. Because what Monster needs now, the stake is too high when it comes to the economy, Mike. Do you
Mhm.
understand? Monster needs to be looking at, okay, remember when we were in town, we were dependent, but we were dependent with a small d. Now Monster is dependent in capital letters.
And Montserrat was even out of budgetary aid at that time.
Exactly. So basically, what I'm saying, we were just British, and we were British in name only, really, because we couldn't come up here freely
Mhm.
like that. But what I'm saying now, what Montserrat needs is youth. I personally think that it's a chance for the youth because, in my view, the adults have tried, the old people have tried, and they failed.
Well,
And
I would dare say that you would need to have people with experience. I mean, if you look at, you were speaking about the British government before. We're just
Mhm.
having an open conversation. You
Yeah.
were speaking
Mhm.
about the British government before. If you look at the makeup of the British government, or because we are speaking about the Montserrat situation, but I could point to just about any other government, you do have that balance of experience and youth coming through and someone offering a guiding hand. So the more experienced ones offering a guiding hand, mentorship, hand
Mhm.
holding to
Mhm.
those coming through. I'm hearing elements of ageism coming up in the election
No,
campaign.
no, 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 no.
All right.
Don't wrong, Mike. I am not talking.
Oh no, I'm not saying pertaining to you. I'm not
Yeah,
saying pertaining to
I'm
you.
not talking youth in terms of age. I'm talking because youth could be youth to politics, to the political arena.
Okay,
Do you
got you.
understand what I
I
mean?
got
I
you. I
don't
got you.
necessarily mean youth in terms of somebody age 70 or age 30. That's not what it is. It's about getting new minds, fresh minds, people with new ideas, bold ideas, and I think also engage the diaspora. Mike, I think part of Montserrat's biggest downfall is the fact that it has not tapped into the vast amount of skill, knowledge, and experience and expertise that is in the diaspora.
Well, there has indeed been that disconnect, unfortunately, and particularly even more recently. And I think a lot of it has come through via the political arena, even before this campaign actually started. And there's been a lot of regrettable viciousness. I can see some people at the moment who were at the forefront of that, and I think they just probably got carried away with emotion, sort of backpedaling away from that. So I hope that, in with respect to the diaspora in United Kingdom, United States, Canada, Caribbean, wherever, that we are starting a new conversation. We are all in this together. But speaking of conversation, I'm going back to a reference you made earlier on about the British government, almost a sense that, well, is Montserrat being abandoned? There's a role for the British government. Montserrat is still a British overseas territory. So I mentioned the word disconnect. Is it a disconnect with the British government, or a new approach more recently coming from the office of the British government's representative in Montserrat?
I think, and this is just me talking, because this is how I feel, that the British government allows its representative in Montserrat to do its quote unquote dirty work.
Hmm.
Because you can't tell me, Mike, that the governor don't have no head. Nobody responsible for the governor. Does she not report to somebody? Isn't some of what's happening in Monza is not, is there no awareness in the the FCD office of what's going on? That's my question. That's what I've got to ask, because the reason I say I think Britain tolerates Montserrat, there's a difference with tolerating somebody and really embracing them. And it tolerates Montserrat because it has to. Do you understand? So it'll give the few shekels that it needs to give. And okay, that's their job done for this period. But when it comes to looking at sustainable, providing Montserrat with the necessary means to be self-sufficient and moving forward and redeveloping, and it's not there.
We're also looking at a situation in Montserrat that has complicated everything, compounded the problem, so to speak, that Montserrat has suffered a terrible, terrible disaster that wrecked the economy, decimated the population, in a sense, quite literally, too.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, there's now the need to rebuild, and we are not seeing enough of that. Montserrat cannot do it on its own. The British government has a tremendous role to play to set Montserrat on a path to redevelopment. I keep talking about a reset, but that reset has to come from both Montserrat and the British
And
government as well, because we have a new British government in place now.
mhm.
Montserrat will soon have a new government, one way or the other. So could that be then the reset moment for all of these things that we are discussing in these conversations, to have a pause, take a look? This is where we are. This is what hasn't happened. And this is the best way to move forward if we are going to come out of whatever it is that Montserrat is mired in at the moment.
Mike, personally, I think Montserrat needs strategic development vision. So Montserrat needs to have, the next government that comes in needs to have a vision of how it's going to take Montserrat forward, clear and precise and concise, something that it can move forward with. Because this election, above anything else, Mike, will decide what kind of Montserrat the next generation inherits. Will we continue to be aid dependent? Okay, we need the budgetary aid. Here you go. Next year, go back again. Or are we gonna look at innovative, a way how Monster can become resilient, self-sufficient, and taps into the resources that it has? Look at what are we doing with that geothermal well in Corkhill, Mike?
I've had the past three conversations, everybody mentions that. It's like this whole geothermal thing is now coming back on the agenda again.
Because every time you look at a friend's status on Facebook, Mull, what, Mull, do you understand?
Yeah, for those who are listening who might know, MOL is the Montserrat Utility Services Limited, and Montserrat has been plagued by just almost I was about to say never ending, but close to that.
Yeah,
Electricity interruption.
outages.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
something needs to be done about that.
Yes. So basically, those are the things the government, the next government need to be going to the British government and saying, you asked us to dig these wells. For all intents and purposes, there was this huge potential. Otherwise, so many millions would not have been spent on it. How are we going to move this forward? Because rather than looking at generators, that's going to cost how much? $1 million. Look at what you have there, the natural resource that you've got there. And that is what the next government have got to be able to do. My
Well, Elle Peale, you have now gone on to another area that I can see you're just as passionate about as you are passionate about the need for some compassion to the pregnant inmate in the prison in Montserrat. And there are so many other things about Montserrat that you are passionate about from your location here in the UK. We could continue talking, but we'll have to pick it up at another conversation. I thank you very much for taking the time. Any closing words from you?
Thanks for talking to me, Mike. And yeah, I'm passionate about Montserrat and everything Montserratian, even though I don't live there. But I just want the next government, whoever that comprises, whatever composition it's made up of, just to recognize that they have a task at hand to take Montserrat forward.